So when I do these talks, I talk about two things. I talk about non-duality, and I talk about the personal self and how to help and balance the personal self. And I see them as two completely different subjects. Talking about the personal self is like, talking about how to fix a broken arm. I see the personal self as something that's in the body, and it's a character arising, and that character doesn't arrive at non-duality. Non-duality is there prior to the character, prior to everything. But sometimes when the character is suffering a lot and there is a lot of emotional discomfort in the body, it's impossible to talk about non-duality. So we have to address that too. And that doesn't mean that it's a lower subject. I think it's beautiful looking and addressing the personal self and working to expand that personal self. And that expansion of the personal self is infinite, just like knowledge is infinite. A Swami said that to me at the river today, that knowledge is infinite, and I thought that's so beautiful. So there I go saying it too. So that's not a lesser work. I don't mean that to be a lesser work. You've got like the absolute, and then working on the personal self is for the lower students. I still work on my personal self and have personal issues that can come up, and I hope that I always have that feeling to expand the personal self and to work on myself and to be humble with my dynamics and not think that I've arrived anywhere. But then there's this other subject of non-duality that's just wonderful, and I also love talking about that and sharing about it. And I think it's total freedom, non-duality, in the sense that it's a realization of wholeness. It's a realization that there is no separation, that this world isn't a separate world. And that's actually your birthright. That's the birthright, whether the personal self is suffering in pain or in pleasure. It's the birthright of everything. And it's happening right now and is right here. And it's a blessing that we're able to talk about it. Like, what a joy. That it can even be communicated and spoken of and celebrated. And that humans can have this experience of apparently separating from source, only to go back and know source again. So have this complicated thinking, this appearance of a personal self, this ability to distinguish time, and distinguish objects, but then also this deep knowing and expression that it's a world of oneness, of wholeness. That's beautiful. So what is non-duality? I can only talk about how non-duality is seen here. And I think, and I feel, and I hope that non-duality is taught in this way, that there is no way to talk about non-duality. So everybody's expression of it is different. Some might express it with words of love, some with nothingness, some with everything, some with consciousness, some with I amness, some light, some talking about soul even. Like Rumi, when Rumi's translated, it's often used the word soul. Some magic, some mystery, some unknowing. And I don't see any as right, and I don't see any as wrong. It's the expression of this. It's the beautiful part that non-duality can't become a dogma, it can't become a religion, it can't become a way. There is no way. It's beyond our human mind in that way, but yet it's the birthright of everything. Everything is non-duality. So that which hears my words now is non-duality. So that which is listening is wholeness. That which is speaking is wholeness. That which is hearing is wholeness. That which is feeling is wholeness. So often, once we've identified with the body, which maybe happens at a young age, and we've begun to believe that we are only somebody that's moving in time, that we're a story, a title, a body, an age, we're our past, and we're moving towards the future. When we've totally identified with that, we forget that there is this other part here that's experiencing. And a lot of people call it consciousness, which is a great word to call it. and that makes it easier, I feel, to talk about. So right now there is something that's conscious happening, and that consciousness doesn't come from the past. It's not something you'll find in the future. It's right here. And when I say consciousness, I mean that ability to experience that this is happening. So right now we're conscious that there's a room. We're conscious that there's rain happening. We're conscious that there is these colours and there's the sound of my voice. We're conscious of everything. But that consciousness doesn't belong to anyone. It doesn't belong to you. There is actually also a consciousness of the you. So you, which says, I am conscious and I'm moving through time, and consciousness is arising inside my body and is looking out at the world, that person that's saying all of that is actually being experienced now. So everything that you think about yourself is being experienced. So you might feel that you've done something wrong or done something right, or think that you're going out later, or that your body looks good now or looks bad. And all of that is appearing in consciousness. There's this awake presence that knows all of it, without knowing it in time, without knowing it in the intellect. It knows it innocently. It doesn't judge. It's absolute unconditioned love. It never judged anything. It's there watching the person. It's there watching this room. It's there knowing everything without any effort. You never put any effort into being conscious. You never woke up in the morning and thought, I've got to turn on being conscious. It happened. It's your birthright. It's your most intimate sense of being. When there's the identification with time and the identification with the personality structure and thinking and feelings and emotions, you begin to suffer because you begin to make up lies about yourself. You begin to think you're a limitation, which isn't true. Your essence is limitless. You begin to think that you've done things wrong, or that it's your job to produce things, to make your life, to fix your life, and you begin to stress and worry about time and think it's your job to look after time. And all these false assumptions begin to arise. And what non-duality is pointing back to something that's beyond all your problems, beyond all your worries, beyond all your limitations. It's right here in the instant of everything. And every teaching talks about it in a different way. And it's so beautiful to hear all the different teachings. So I first heard about non-duality in Buddhism, and the first time it was expressed to me was in, you've got to be in the moment. And when they said that, like electricity ran through my body. Like I knew something about this moment. I knew there was a mystery here. I knew there was a magic here. And when they said you've got to be in the moment, there was something that was known. And it's not really that you've got to be in the moment, because who would be in the moment? But at that point, that was all I could hear, was you've got to be in the moment. And that did something. That touched me. I remember after that I was walking down the stairs and my hand touched the balcony, and there was suddenly this intimacy with the balcony. Like that was all there was the feeling of that wood in my fingers. And even though I didn't know anything really about the absolute or what was being talked about on the intellectual level, just them saying you've got to be in the moment, there was a knowing that there's an intimacy, that there's some magic here that I was forgetting, that I knew from childhood, that I knew when I listened to music, I knew when I fell in love, I knew when I enjoyed something. There was a magic here, right now, in this, in mystery, in wonder. And most of my life I was in this sort of narrow world of thinking and time. I was thinking about me, about what I can get out of things, about what else could be here, about what I'd done wrong, about what others had done to me. And what is kind of veiled in a mist of me and my problems and my life and what I needed and what I wanted and what I thought about, and my emotional body. Like, I was a very emotional person and still am an emotional person, and I was overrun by my emotions. So my emotions my emotions determined my experience. I was more run by my emotions, I think, than my thinking. But they are similar. Like, the emotions, you think, and then the emotions get activated, your emotions get activated, and then the thinking gets activated. It's a very similar thing. But there was a knowing when that was talked about, that there was something really beautiful about what was happening. And I think that happens to all of us on this spiritual search, that we hear these words, like we hear something said, just a tiny thing, like knowledge is infinite. Like, you are infinite, life is infinite, this is it. The answers are here, the answers are known. This is mystery, this is magic. I think all of us have at some point resonated with that, and we thought it was us resonating with us. We thought that we were having an experience and it belonged to us and that we remembered something. But actually, there was a remembering beyond you. Something was touched beyond you, beyond the character. And the character wants to know how to get back to that. The personality structure wants to be able to stick its flag in the present moment, to be able to always be here, or to find that magic. It knows it, and it's always looking for it. And it thinks that it will find it in a person, in falling in love. Like, falling in love feels very magical. That's a very intimate experience. And it thinks, if I fall in love, if I find a better teacher, if I find a better meditation practice, I find more money or more safety, I will be able to ignite that magic. I'll be able to relax into that magic. I'll be able to stop looking. But it doesn't happen like that. You don't get to own this magic. If you did, then magic would be limited. If you could grab hold of magic, if you could own it, if you could have it, then magic would be a limited thing. Your essence would be a limited thing. The fact that you can't have it means that it's infinite, that it's unobtainable, it's not a thing. And if it's not a thing, it's also everything, which is really wonderful. I know the person's like, yeah, but I would rather just be able to own it and open the box and have it when I want it, and then close the box when I don't want it. But it's really, that's not what you want. You don't want to own everything. That would be very stressful if you had to own and look after everything. If you could own this and have presence. You don't want that. What you want is to stop seeking, actually. You just want to be here now. That's truly deeply what you want when you really investigate what it is you're looking for. Everything you're looking for is about being able to relax into now. Like, learn to meditate to relax into now. I get enough money and I can relax now. I get home and I can relax now. The Swamis, though, so the Swami I met today, he doesn't get that. He doesn't finally get a big donation in a house. He's not allowed to own things. Like, that's his vows, is that he doesn't get to own any of it. He has to live right on the edge of life, in that exciting place where life provides. Life gives. I'm not saying that we all have to become swamis, but I'm just suggesting a different way, that maybe arrival never happens. And if it's never going to happen, arrival, then maybe it's a concept that you need to let go of. And maybe it's a concept that's always made you feel like you're lacking something, like you're missing something. And maybe arrival isn't the answer. Like this waiting to arrive, waiting to achieve. It can be, on the human level, it can be very healing to use the idea of arrival sometimes, but that's another story. If somebody has a problem, then I might encourage them actually to think about arrival. It depends on who I'm working with. But on the absolute level, you aren't going to arrive at consciousness, you are it. I'm pointing to non-duality now, not healing the person. And sometimes the person needs carrots or needs hope or needs the idea of arrival to settle. But on the absolute level, you don't get to arrive. You're not going to make it to the absolute. Your suffering has always been that you've been seeking for something other than what's happening. I assure you, the Buddhists say this in the teaching of craving. So when I studied Buddhism, what they taught me was that suffering was craving. They didn't actually ever teach me that suffering was the illusion of self. They taught me it was all suffering came from craving, and what craving was the belief that pleasure would satisfy you and pain will take from you, and that you're lost in this cycle of seeking for pleasure and avoidance of pain. This was the teaching that, maybe there were higher teachings that they would have taught me, but after 5 years I quit Buddhism, so I never got to the higher teachings. I was like, I'm off to non-duality. But that was what they really taught, that you suffer because you seek. And seeking isn't stopping the movement towards pleasure, it's the craving, the belief that you will find consciousness, that you will find this moment, what you look for, in pleasure, in a future event, in avoiding a past event. That you will get there. And this isn't true. You could never arrive there. You always have it. So let's look more closely at what consciousness is, what your essence is. So do you ever experience a time where you're not conscious? Do you ever experience not being conscious? I don't mean conscious as in conscious of your personal dynamics and being conscious of this moment. I don't mean personal attention. I'm not talking about personal awareness. I'm talking about that consciousness that disappears if you go to the doctor and they do an operation on you and they give you an injection and you get knocked out. Do you ever experience life without consciousness? Is life ever separate from consciousness? What your mind does is your mind says, yes, when I'm in deep sleep or when I go to the doctors and they knock me out, I experience without consciousness, but that's not true. There is no experience in deep sleep. There is no life in deep sleep. So I'm asking you if you ever experience life without consciousness. Is life ever separate from consciousness? It's impossible. Like, how would you experience life if there wasn't consciousness? That's totally impossible. There always has to be consciousness when there is life. Life and consciousness are the same. So the next question is are things arising in your consciousness or out of your consciousness? So right now, am I appearing in consciousness or out of consciousness? Is my voice appearing in consciousness or out of consciousness? So you're conscious of me, right? So therefore, I'm appearing in your consciousness. So then the next question is does consciousness ever begin or end? So did your consciousness end in the cafe? So say if you're in the cafe before you came here, did it end in the cafe and then a new consciousness begin now? Or is there only ever one consciousness? One moment? So that consciousness is the same consciousness when you were born, when you were 1, when you were 10, when you got told off, when you were happy, when you were excited, when you were 20, 30, 40. It's the same one consciousness. It never ends. It's always still, and everything is appearing and disappearing in it. So let's ask more questions along this line. So does consciousness ever move? So it never actually really moves, yet all things are moving in consciousness. It feels like consciousness is moving, it feels like your body's moving, and you think the consciousness is attached to your body. But consciousness is always still in everything. But everything, which is also consciousness, is moving in consciousness. So when the Buddhists say, or when teachers say that your nature is stillness and movement, or your nature is stillness sometimes, it depends how they're pointing. They're pointing to that consciousness. And it's your own experience. It's what's looking out of your eyes now. It's what's appearing as everything in this room. And you never lost it. Consciousness never ages. The body ages, the person ages. Things age, things change. But consciousness never ages. It never accepts or rejects anything. It never has any opinion. It just loves. It just accepts. I say it doesn't accept or not accept anything. What I mean is it doesn't judge anything, but it's there, loving everything that's appearing. This is who you are, this consciousness. This consciousness is no thing, not a thing, and everything. It's happening right now. It never starts and it never ends. It's ageless, and it's who you are. It's what's listening to me now. The body doesn't listen to me. The body is like a microphone. It's like an instrument that consciousness is using in order to create sound. But the body isn't alive. Your character isn't alive. Your character isn't dead, and the body isn't dead either, but they're not alive or dead. They're just not experiencing. What's experiencing is consciousness. What hears my voice is consciousness. It's this stillness that's piercing everything. It's looking out of your eyes now. It is all objects now, and all objects are moving in it. It's this stillness and this movement. And it never went through time. Time is appearing and disappearing in it. It's love. So right now, love is looking at you. Consciousness is looking at you. And love is looking at me. It's the same. This is what's been forgotten in the human form. This isn't meant to negate the personality structure. The personality structure is beautiful. Every part of the human level is beautiful. Your apparent awakening process is beautiful. Every part of you, your suffering, your hells, your heavens, is absolutely divine expression of this. It's not meaning any negation, but it's questioning your fundamental idea of separation. You aren't separate. Your essence isn't separate. The person appears to be separate. The objects appear to be separate, but your essence isn't separate. And this is what's been forgotten in most of humanity. But I have a very beautiful feeling that it's becoming more and more known. When there's the identification with the personality structure, lots of difficulties rise in that person's life because they always feel cut off from their limitless nature. So they always feel they lost something. but then they look for their limitless nature in a limitation, in money, in people, in friends, in experiences, in feelings, in emotions, in thoughts, and you will never find your limitless nature in a thing. That's why when we go back to the Buddhist teachings about craving, they say it's the end of seeking, the end of the belief that pleasure will bring you your limitless nature, and pain, the avoidance of pain, will stop you losing your limitless nature. Your limitless nature can only ever be found now in what's happening in your essence, which is here and ever present, and never is born and never dies. So that's non-duality. my best way of expressing it. Well, I don't know if this is the best way, but my best way in this moment of expressing it. So you are very welcome to ask anything you like